everyone. I'm Dr. Mary, and today I'm here with Angela Jensen Ramirez, who is a certified sex therapist and a certified emotionally focused couples therapist. She works here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and, I asked Angela about diving into purity culture some more, just because there's a lot of apprehension around sex. Sometimes when people have come from, purity culture and things like that. I know for a fact that I came from purity culture, and it took a lot to kind of undo that. And I still, struggle with it, but there's a lot that can be done to help people and help you have enjoyable sex. So,
yeah, it is pretty pervasive. It's not something that is uncommon. It's quite common.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. And what I see in my clinic, though, is a lot of pain with sex as a result of purity culture, which is multifactorial, but that's a big one. I'll say. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and it's not saying that any religion is particularly bad or anything like that, but the way that things were worded when I was growing up was like, sex is, you're going to burn in hell. I remember I was told I was going to burn. We were told that if you French kiss somebody, you would burn in hell, or something along those lines. And I was like, wow, I'm glad that I'm 7th grade and I look not cute and nobody wanted to French kiss me anyway.
Yeah.
So, but that moment stuck with me, because I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and couple that with, if you French kiss, you'll burn in hell, but you need to save yourself for the person you love. And when you French kiss them, it's okay. Like, that's really confusing message.
That is.
Right? Like,
really
I'm going to burn in hell. But there's something about a future person who's not here that if I get married and I follow the rules, then I have to relax all this burning in hell.
Yes, it's undoing the, oh, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And then all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah.
And how do you work with that? It's tough. And any fear-based messaging in general, even in healthcare, it just doesn't work. We know this in every aspect of our lives. And so we'll jump into it.
Yeah.
So we got a message from Nina. She's a 37-year-old who writes us to say she's been continuing to have guilt after having sex with her long-term partner. She's also complaining of pain with sex as well. She grew up in a very religious community where purity culture was very dominant. So she's having some issues undoing that and embracing her sexuality. So I'm excited to jump into this just because it's, like I've mentioned before, I'm coming from a very religious background and transforming that into who I want to be versus fear-based stuff and, being told, you can't do this or you'll go to hell for that. And, so yeah, I'm really excited to chat about this. So,
Great.
All right. So based on that, what are the most common side effects of purity culture that you see?
A lot of what Nina just said. Yeah, shame, guilt, isolation.
Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah.
Confusion. And what do you do?
Yeah. How do you undo that? Yeah. It's like, especially if you're coming at it from, this religious perspective, or whether you're religious or not anymore, it still kind of sticks with you, right? I don't really identify with any religion at this point, but the point is having that base of everything I'd heard about sex was fear-based, right? And so, and I'll see a lot of people in the clinic with this, and it's hard to undo that, especially if you have a long-term partner, or even if you are still practicing a certain religion and you waited and you had sex, in a marriage or whatever it is. Regardless, it's still something that people have to undo, regardless, right? And so, what are some common examples that you've seen of this?
I think Nina's example is to the point. I've had kind of a larger spectrum. So I've worked with people who have come from maybe a very religious or evangelical background and have done a lot of work to shed those concepts, and that tends to fall into the therapy category of trauma. So there's some trauma aspects there to
religious trauma
to work through, and have gone on to embrace, always with a dose of apprehension still, because it is hard to completely shed those ideas, their own sexuality, a new sexuality, finding out who they are. And I can talk a little bit about that. And some people just, it's too much work. And so they try and find what can fit into a reasonable lifestyle for themselves. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, it does. It does. I think sometimes people don't even know where to go. I mean, personally for me, one of the biggest things that helped me was just understanding my body in a objective way. Like this is my pelvic floor. These are my genitals, the different parts of it, and understanding that perspective, because it's like, okay, this is objective, right? Like, this is what my body is, and this is what it's meant to do, or, you know what I mean? And so coming at it from that perspective is something that, I don't know, has really helped me. And then also, undoing a lot of those thoughts that are perpetuating in your brain over and over.
Yeah. I would say that what you did was you began to see your sexuality as your own in that process.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is actually a huge step. Purity ideas, purity culture is not just religiously based, it's pervasive across all girls in the United States. I can only speak for the U.S. because that's the only place I've lived. All girls and boys and people. It's so everywhere, right? The movies we watch, the books we read, the politics we see. It is so everywhere. And part of that is that our sexuality is not our own. And so when I hear you say that, how I frame it is you took a step to own your own sexuality, that this is your body, that you want to understand what's going on, and that it belongs to you first, which I think is really important and is a very, it's not something we're taught.
Yeah. I mean, we're not even taught about it from like an objective point of view. Like, hey, these are our genitals. We're told like, ooh, don't say vagina, but you can say penis. You can say penis. That's okay.
Well,
not
even
vagina or vulva and all that stuff. But yeah.
Right. And even the anatomy and what we learn is only through what is accepted of people allowing us to learn from.
Exactly. And it depends probably with all the changes in Texas now and all that stuff. Maybe some restrictions on what we can learn, which, why are those people making decisions for healthcare versus healthcare providers? But that's a different topic. Yes, it's a different topic. But yes, so no, I mean, exactly that. And, it's funny too, because even just like when you learn your anatomy, right, the pictures that you see in the anatomy book, I've had multiple people ask me this, like, is my vulva, like, do I need to get it fixed? Like, is it abnormal? And, you look at all of these things, like, so even just like anatomy pictures and things like that, everybody has this like perfect little vulva in there, and, just the anatomy pictures, and people are realizing, like, I'm like, that's not real. That's not real. And every vulva looks different. And so not only that is, we're getting kind of this false narrative in a lot of different aspects around sex. And I think it's really harming people, especially in my case, from what I've seen, women or people with vulvas.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And if you're raised in a social, cultural way that your anatomy is not something to cherish, you might miss the developmental phase of learning and exploring, which is a natural part of childhood, and skip that entirely to go to a phase of probably disgust and repulsion. So that's also an aspect of it, just developmentally. So in the lifespan, when you're a kid, like a baby doesn't know the difference between, what is gross and what is not gross, what is right or what is wrong. They might touch themselves, but they don't know that's wrong. They kind of just experience pure pleasure. Yeah. Right? That's a developmental lifespan phase. And if you're taught during this phase at like even a precognitive time where you can't remember, no, that's wrong, stop it, stop it, you are already embedding, like the light switch is turning off. Don't do that. That's wrong. That's wrong. Because you're also looking to please the people that are your caregivers, the people who love you. So all that is to say, then you grow up with some disgust and repulsion, and this is wrong.
Yeah, my body's gross.
And you look in a textbook and you see a vulva, and everyone's saying, wow, that's beautiful. And you're going, no.
Yeah.
Right? And so that repulsion, disgust lives in the body, and that's also something to kind of work through and shed.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not a natural component of who we are.
Yeah. I remember listening to something the other day. It was like, who were you before the world told you you couldn't be that?
Yes.
And it really resonated with me because it's like, all these societies, expectations of the community that you grew up in, it can really put a damper on who we are, our happiness, and all these different things because we were told that's bad. And it's like, well, it's not bad. It's just maybe you do that in your room.
Right.
Or you understand, hey, this is something you do in private.
Right.
Right. And yeah, I think that hopefully things are shifting, but I still think that there's a lot to unpack there. And then what I've seen too is that it actually affects people's rehabs insignificantly. Like sometimes, so when you use dilators, right? So we'll use dilators. They're basically just long, they look like dildos, but we call them dilators. And so basically you gradually increase the size to increase to the partner size that that you're trying to have penetrative sex with. And when you do that, you insert it, and then the pelvic floor muscles need to be relaxed and things like that. So sometimes there needs to be clitoral stimulation because with that, the vagina widens and the uterus and cervix rise up, right? And so with that basically means that, hey, actually, clitoral stimulation and masturbation, we need that to sometimes with pelvic floor rehab. And what I find is sometimes people are like, I can't do it. Like it feels wrong. And, that's where I'm like, hey, go see Angela. But what would you tell somebody with that?
A couple different things. So even going back to Nina's story, if Nina were here, I would want to acknowledge that all the thoughts that are going on in your head and your body tensing, this limbic response, the stress response, might have origins that you're not even consciously aware of, right? So if we're talking about developmental phases that you don't have a clear consciousness of, so you can't snap your fingers and say, body, enjoy. Right? So like
that was only that.
I know it could be. It's a lot of work, right? Yeah. So the first part is like, don't expect that of yourself.
No.
Just you are who you are. We are where we are right now, and we all have our own things that we're struggling against, right? So a bit of acceptance there. Yeah. Then I'm curious to discover the sexuality of the client. So if Nina was going through this process, I would want to know, let's explore you, right? I want to know what actually her body wants from her, apart from what her partner is wanting, right? I do get a lot of people that come in and say, no, I really just want to have the penis and vagina. Maybe we want to have a baby or something like that. And we can work with that. But there is a very important part of your own sexuality, your own eroticism, or not, or, you know, whatever sexuality you discover you are, and respecting that and honoring that in yourself. So one way to do that with dilators that I encourage people to do is to find something they can pair with the process that turns them on.
Yeah.
So maybe there's erotic literature that they might read alongside of it. Maybe they lay with their partner and their partner is touching them while they do it. And then we work within the boundaries of what's comfortable for them. So if it's your partner lays next to you while you're dilating, maybe you don't want your partner to look at you, right? So Nina might feel uncomfortable. I don't want my partner to see my body. It makes me stressed out. Okay, well, how do we help you feel less stressed out with that? Maybe your partner turns the other way and you're just back-to-back touching, right? But we want to find something that will build the arousal and pair it so that they can get to the coupling part, which is what they're looking for. So I think that's where I step in and ask them, what can we put in here? What can we add? You know, what if you listen to something? What if you turn the lights down? What if you lit some candles, right? Or put on some music? Like, make this a pleasurable experience. Make it enjoyable. As long as it's medical and you have to do it, your body's going to know that's what's going on.
Yes, exactly. They're like, I can't get myself to do it. And I'm like, well, you got to have fun with it in some way, you know?
Name your dilator.
Yeah, name it. That's amazing. Like, what would you name your dilator?
I don't know. I just had some funny names come to mind.
Like what?
I was like, Fred.
Fred? Frederick or just Fred?
Just Fred. It was
Fred.
Yeah, Fred. There's Fred.
Fred, what you doing? Oh, I told you to hide, man. That would be a story to tell guests. Fred's just hanging out on the couch.
Yeah, or like rock and roll stars or something.
Yeah,
like if you like music,
so fun. That is so fun. I love that idea. No, I think it's great. Yeah, it's like pairing it with something that you know makes you more comfortable.
Yeah,
you know, and even if it's like with the dilators and stuff, like even if it's just thinking about using them, right? Even if you can't get yourself to use them, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty crazy how much, like, I almost felt like for the longest time I was like, I can't undo this. This is just, I've been programmed this way. This is what it is. And that's why I get excited about this, because it's like, no, you guys, there's a lot still there. But unfortunately, I mean, from what I see, even purity culture is even in mainstream, right? I mean, like, think about like growing up, like, I mean, if we're talking binary terms, if a male has sex with multiple partners, right? And then a female has sex with multiple partners, who's more labeled negatively?
Right.
You know? And so it's like, oh, it's acceptable for men to do that. But if a woman does it, that's questionable, right? And so we do, even from a non-religious standpoint, have that stuff kind of in society as well. Right? And so it really attacks women, I think, in many different aspects.
Yeah. Well, and what we touched upon by you kind of laughing and saying, what would you name it?
You're like, Fred.
Is just the Fred. Playfulness.
Yes. Playfulness.
I mean, playfulness is essential.
Yeah.
To sexual pleasure, to eroticism, to companionship, to enjoying the company of others, to relaxing. And when you're in a culture that says, no, don't, bad.
Yeah.
You're going to go somewhere bad. Something bad is going to happen to you. You don't learn to be playful.
Oh, no, we're not. Playfulness, it's really interesting. Playfulness in society in general is like, I mean, I think we're making steps towards being potentially playful again, just because we're seeing all the burnout and depression and anxiety that people have from not being playful, right? It was like being told, no, you can't do those things. And it's like, well, why not? You know?
Yeah.
Are there different things that they can do in other aspects of their lives that kind of, I don't know, this sounds so stupid, but I love it. But lately I've been eating like a little bit of dessert before dinner, like kind of going against. And when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh my God, you can't do that." I'm like, "Why can't I? Why
I'm gonna do it." Yeah, that's even kind of playful.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, just like, would it help to kind of insert that playfulness in other parts of your life too?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Sex is never only about sex.
Oh, no.
Right? Yeah. So there's other areas, like where, even just like when you're working, how are you holding yourself? Yeah. Is your posture tight? Are you like angry? Yeah. Like that's a place to like slow down and go, oh, I don't need to be that. Do I need to be that way right now? No, I don't need to be that way right now. And that sort of mindfulness. Yeah. What you're doing, a little dose of fun, a little dose of taboo, a little dose of something different. Yeah. Does a world of good just for us in general, but definitely sexually.
It's like these like pre-programmed things that we've been told. And, it's really fascinating too that like, not fascinating. It's sad because I'll have people come in and they're having pain with sex and they're here because they feel bad for their partner. And it's like, well, what about you? Mm-hmm. We've like almost forgotten, like, I feel bad for my partner. I feel like they might leave me or this and this. And I'm like, oh, that's more kind of adding on like the shame or guilt and all this stuff on top of it. So you got that layer as well when it's like, well, hey, your sexuality is priority or your sexual experience is priority, right? Yeah. We've almost kind of gotten into this shift of like, oh, it's all about, if again we're talking heterosexual, it's like, hey, the male partner, like we have to please them or else they're gonna leave us and find a 20-year-old. It's just this perpetual fear. And I'm laughing just because I know it happens, but it's like that is a perpetual fear. Like I'm afraid my partner's going to leave.
And it happens. It actually does happen.
So. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it happens in very vulnerable times for people, right? And so, and it's also interesting because it's like it's like that's also kind of telling of your partner if you're processing something and going through something and they're not even wanting to like connect and learn. I mean,
right. So that isolation, fear, all that stress.
It's perpetuating.
Yeah. I mean, how can you relax and enjoy yourself when there's so much at stake? Like that's...
Yeah. Oh my God, I have to have sex now. Penetrative sex. If I don't, they're going to leave me.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. That's like your whole world's going to be uprooted. But that's real.
It is real.
It's real. And it's a compounding effect. Like a podcast I did a while back was on pain with sex, and it's never just one thing. It's all these different things. Like you're saying, like including what we're talking about now. It's not just the pelvic floor muscles relaxing. Sure, I can give you some pelvic floor muscle relaxation techniques, but we're not looking at, well, why were they tight in the first place?
Yeah.
If you're tense, if your whole body's tense.
And it's a real experience for even somebody who has a penis that can't enter the vagina the way they want it to feel frustration.
Totally. It's all normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having the room for them to also express that within a container of safety in the relationship is really important. I just don't think that we're also educated in doing that because that requires communication skills, right? Yeah. So if Nina were to come to me and say, yeah, but, this last time we tried and we couldn't, and he got upset and he just left the room and then we didn't talk for the rest of the night. So that's like an actual negative consequence that's contributing a feedback loop, right? That Nina's now going, I don't want to do that again because being out of connection with the person I love during what should be a very connective experience is so terrible, right? I don't even want to, even further bad.
Yeah, it's perpetuating that fear. Yeah, that constant circle.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to know that, like, this isn't about like, yes, the partner, it's okay for them to be frustrated. It's all that, but it's all about how you handle it. If you yell at your partner, did you ever see the show? Was it Unorthodox or Orthodox? It was about, I think it was on Netflix, where this woman grew up in a really religious community and she got married really young, and then her husband was like yelling at her every time she couldn't have penetrative sex, and then the family got involved too, like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? And then she left. Eventually they got divorced and she found somebody else, and you know, she was able to be free and express her sexuality. Obviously it's a TV show, so like it doesn't happen that quick, but the point is, like, everybody was like blaming her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that this happens.
Yeah.
I mean, even just with other people, even just besides the partner.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
that's not nobody else's business. And
Yeah.
it's not, it's like if you came at like a child that was like crying, being like, stop crying, you wouldn't do that, right?
No.
You would approach them kindly and try to calm them and be there for them, versus like as an adult, blaming the victim is, oh my gosh, it's just perpetuating it even more.
Yeah, and I have not seen the show.
I'm blanking
Interesting,
on the
I'll
name
go.
of it, but I think it's on Orthodox on Netflix. It came out during like the beginning of COVID. I don't remember, but anyways, it's just interesting.
That does fall into a lot of what we're taught relationships should be, or marriage should be. One person has a sexual need, and therefore the other person is expected to fulfill that. It's sometimes we get an even balance, but a lot of times there is an imbalance. And when there is an imbalance, sorry, this keeps falling, then it's, what do we do?
Yeah.
So one of the reframes I do with couples, and I do think that if someone is in a coupledom, they should be doing pelvic floor therapy in tandem with the couple communication relationship.
For sure, yeah.
Or at least see a therapist or somebody a few times just to work out that it's going good, right? Because sometimes I'll hear, oh yeah, we're fine. But then I learn later messages were being skewed or there were hurts, you know. So I reframe it from an expectation or an obligation that you must do, right? We're in a coupledom, therefore I'm obligated to be with you sexually or perform or allow your penis to penetrate my vagina, whatever it is, to an invitation. Okay, so going back to your sexuality is your own. That's absolutely true. Your sexuality is your own, and your partner's sexuality is their own. So instead of looking at it like I just said, you must do it, I would like people to change it to, I invite you to know me. Okay, so I invite you into my sexuality. When I invite you into my sexuality, then I can also put up boundaries of that doesn't feel good. Okay. And if you are invited in, then you also have an understanding of stopping when I say that doesn't feel good, and quite honestly, thanking me for having been invited in, if that makes sense. Yeah. So here we're working with both people, both inviting the other to know about them in a physical, in a mental, in an emotional, in a spiritual, in an erotic sense, however it is. And if it starts to feel bad, then I can't, that's my boundary, right? So instead of a rigid boundary of I can't, I don't like what you like, I'm inviting you in to know about me. I'm inviting you in to see that I actually am able to take in more of a dilator when I'm listening to erotica, and this is the kind of erotica I like. Ooh, that's a big one. That's a big step of vulnerability for someone to share that with their partner.
Oh, yeah.
And your partner comes in and they say, ooh, that's what you like?
Oh.
Right? Okay, that was too much.
Yeah.
So I invited you in to learn about me, and that didn't feel good.
Yeah, you opened up, you were vulnerable. And then the worst thing that you can be met with when you're vulnerable is judgment.
Right,
Like,
right.
oh.
But it's easier for me as an individual to see that didn't feel good to me when you did that than if I don't know that I have the right to invite someone into me. So if I'm expected to tell you what I'm into and then you have a judgment against me. What that leaves me nowhere, right? That leaves me defenseless. Okay. And so for sexuality, we want to feel proud, good, honoring, in harmony with our sexuality.
Yeah.
Am I making
No,
sense?
that makes total. I mean, essentially, it sounds like to me you're describing consent.
Yes.
And
I am
so-
actually describing consent. You're right.
Because, I mean, I never got sex ed, but and the people that have, I mean, consent, I feel like, I mean, I didn't even really hear about it until I was a professional, you know, in healthcare. And it was more of like once I got into the pelvic floor realm, and that's not even talked about in healthcare at all. Like even with like, even with like an internal assessment with a pelvic floor physical therapist, I ask people, I have them sign a form. I ask them, are you okay? And they're like, you don't need to keep asking me every time. And I said, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Like you have every right to revoke your consent if it's uncomfortable for you. We won't do it for long. I just need to assess a few things. But if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to do it. And also that goes to play in long-term relationships.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, if you're not wanting to have sex, that's your obligation. You don't owe that to anybody.
So imagine this adjustment, this reframe mindset adjustment. A patient comes into you and they say, I am inviting you to learn about my body so that you can help me to understand it in different ways. Versus what we usually do see, I'm coming in here for you to tell me what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right? So
It doesn't feel good.
It's different, right?
Yeah.
And so, in a relationship, there is an invitation,
Yeah.
and that is consent.
Yeah.
Okay? That also means that your partner might be into different things, right? And that they are inviting you to learn. It's not this is how it is, or there's something wrong with you if you don't.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. And there's almost like these society's expectations that, like we said before, you have to please your partner. It's like, no, well, it's mutual, right? Yeah. It's a mutual thing. Like it's a mutually beneficial thing. And if that's disregarded, I mean, then it's just one way, then of course it's not going to be enjoyable for the other partner.
No.
And I mean, it's really interesting because it's like, when you think about it from the perspective of choosing somebody every day to be with them versus, hey, I married this person, so I'm in it forever, or I've committed to this person, so I'm in it forever. And it's like, no, every day is a choice, right? And every day you are choosing that person and they are choosing you, and you are choosing to have consent, or you're choosing to not consent to sex.
Yeah.
And like what you're saying is like pulling back your own identity.
Yeah.
Like just because you're a couple doesn't mean you need to let everything go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can still have a beautiful partnership and have amazing communication and have your boundaries.
And have differences.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody might be into something more kinky than you. Okay, well, how can you work together and kind of meet them where they're at, or whatever you feel comfortable with.
Right.
And having that communication, because usually we're not really taught how to communicate about sex. And so I think I really like your approach of looking at it like, hey, you're your own individual person.
Yeah.
And, anything that I have done in my life out of fear has bitten me in the ass every time. So if I'm going to keep having sex with a partner because I'm fear that I'm going to lose them, that eats at you.
Yeah.
Oh, that eats at you over and over and over. And it's, approaching it from how can I be enjoyable for me too, in this mutual beneficial thing.
So also circling back to Nina's original question, part of my assessment and understanding with Nina would be, what is this actually about? Right? Yeah. Because a relationship and a sexual engagement between a relationship within or however you want to construct it, the pillars of it are safety, right? Which is consent. Consent builds safety, and communication. And with those two things, that has nothing to do with anatomy. Actually, anatomy is the icing on the cake there. Okay, because even if you never get, Nina, if you never get to the point of penetrative sex, with the safety of consent and communication, you could feel all sorts of wonderful things. You really can, right? The body is a whole erogenous zone. The biggest erogenous, organ we have
Is our brain.
is our brain.
Totally.
So when you are inviting somebody to know you, they are inviting you to know them, you are consensual and you have communication around boundaries, you feel playful with each other because there's that safety, you can do anything. There's a lot of fun stuff out there,
Yeah, meeting somebody on that intimate level emotionally. I mean, that is... like, that's what people dream about, having that connection, that love, that mutual beneficial relationship. And to get to that point, we have to undo a lot of these biases that we've been told, right? Like, sex is bad. And then all of a sudden it's okay, And so coming at it from that perspective is important.
And it takes time.
Totally. Yeah. I remember a therapist told me this, maybe, I don't know if it was you or somebody, but basically that 5-lane highway, you have your brain, your default patterns, which is like a 5-lane highway, right? And so you're immediately like, sex is bad, clench up your pelvic floor muscles, your whole body's tense, right? Because you're in this fight or flight mode. And then there's this little dirt road that's, no, sex, that was just what you were told. Sex is okay. Like, you can, keep exploring and doing things that feel good for you. And then you keep refilling that dirt road until it becomes a 2-lane highway, 3-lane highway, 4-lane, 5-lane.
There you go.
And then you've got that neuroplasticity, which is that new pathway. And the way that, because it's hard to undo.
It is.
Because you feel like you're repeatedly telling yourself the same shit over and over and over.
Yep.
And then finally it clicks.
Yep.
But that still doesn't mean it's easy after it clicks.
No.
But it's better each time.
Yep. That's absolutely true. I did not tell you that, but I really like it. So if anyone works with me, I'll be telling them that story.
Well, I was on this podcast.
I learned about the 5-lane highway and the dirt road. Let's do it.
Well, I just think it's cool. I saw something the other day on just I think, it's the biggest thing is neuroplasticity, because if we've been told, you hear all these things. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can't do all these things when you're older. And it's like, no, that's bullshit.
It is.
Like, that's
my scientific response. It is bullshit.
My scientific response is bullshit.
I like the accent.
That's the medical way to say it.
Yeah. It's so true. And tons of research to back that up.
Totally. Yeah. And just neuroplasticity, if you've never heard of it, it's basically your brain making new pathways to help you learn how to think or feel or just kind of be a different way that you want to be. Would you say that?
Yeah. And one way of doing that is in relationship with someone else.
Yeah.
So our brains, the neuroplasticity of working together and communicating and sorting things out actually accelerates those change neurons in the brain.
Wow.
I love working with couples for this reason.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just these, you have these moments of like, and that is rewired, right? I don't have to be in that anymore.
Yeah. I think it's that realization like, oh my God, how many times have I thought, well, this is reality. And then somebody's like, well, what if this is also reality?
Right.
And you're like, your mind's blown.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, how have I never thought about it that way?
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. I had one of those recently,
Really?
actually.
What was it?
Yes.
Was it about Fred?
No. No. I don't even know why that's the name that came up. No, I was making copies of some questionnaires. So there's a sexological survey that I'll do with some of my clients. Stephanie Bueller, she's a sex therapist. She constructed it. So I was making copies so I could bring it into a session. Anyways, while I was doing that lovely ritual of just like scanning copy, I realized I think sometimes I make things bigger than they actually are with my partner.
What do you mean?
Like I might read into something he did and go, oh, that what's really going on is.
Oh, yeah. You're projecting your own stuff.
Something. Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, it happens a lot. So I'll say, sure, projecting might be like 40, 50%. There's some other stuff. Just like I'm feeling anxious, right? So that's the projection part. So yeah, you're feeling anxious, right? Oh, I might be making something big, Or he'll say, no, it's really not a big deal. And I'm like, you don't really mean that.
Yeah, we have these like things in our head. I'm like, oh, they're going to leave me.
Right. These little fear.
Mine's like abandonment, fear of abandonment.
Yeah. Like I don't really believe or trust what you're saying.
Yeah,
so I might make things bigger.
Yeah.
And so that was my aha moment, and I go home and I tell him, I'm like, wow, I had this idea that sometimes I put on you what's not actually happening with you.
What did he do?
He was like, yeah.
He's like, thanks.
Yeah. He is married to a therapist, so I'm sure he's heard this all before. It's like, yep, that's true.
What's those aha moments where you go up to your partner and you're like, I'm so sorry I've been this way. And it's like, they're like sometimes dumbfounded, like, wow. Like, that was, I didn't even have to really tell you.
Yeah.
Or I just had to slightly mention it. And, I just think it's funny. Yeah.
But like to the neuroplasticity, you have to be the one to realize it.
Yeah.
That's another thing with the couples and with friendships or peers or family or whatever it is. They might tell you, you might notice a dynamic, you might notice a pattern, right? Even like with the dilators, like I might notice that when I mention the dilators, my partner's energy drops, right? So here we are in like a feedback loop. I notice my partner's energy drops and I say to myself, oh, they hate this. They're so mad at me. I'm so problematic. I'm never going to get this. Our relationship is doomed. They're going to leave me. Right. And so here's this narrative that goes on.
Yeah.
And then we do that which we believe.
Yeah. It's like you're manifesting this reality that you've made in your head when none of it, it's just we're doing it based on our biggest fears or anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing I might do in that point is say, you hate these dilators. I'm such a problem. Right. And now my partner can't help but respond to that. And they're saying, no, stop. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Okay. But if somebody's telling us that's not the case, we don't register it until we finally register it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Right. So that's that neuroplasticity, just coming back to couples work and that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a bit of a tangent.
I think that's great. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And recognizing your own narrative that you're saying in your head, right? Like, what is that narrative?
Yeah.
Do you write it down? Do you tell your partner? What do you suggest people do? Write it down? Or recognize
They
it?
know it for the most part. Most partners know it, but write it down. The neuroplasticity thing is the reframe of letting in another narrative that could be true.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know. Your partner might have been experiencing, actually something did change. I did have an energy drop, but it was more of my own working out how I'm now going to incorporate the dilators into my erotic building, right?
Yeah.
It could have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But so talking about it, letting in that information. Oh, it's not.
Yeah. And if something isn't what you want to hear, I feel like it's so hard to shift your brain. Like, it's like, like you might just want to just kind of sit in your own anguish and misery and tell yourself like that you're not lovable and just hang out there. Man, I've definitely been there. And then you're like, why is nothing working? Why do I keep fighting with my partner? Or why this, why that? And it's like, well, it's like this perpetuating story. I mean, I think people know, but I really don't think they know like I think that we keep ourselves so busy with Instagram and TikTok and life and work and all these things that are constantly going, that sitting and being with your intuition and listening to your subconscious brain is like, many people don't do that. And so you might not even realize that you're perpetuating these thoughts or fears based on who you were as a child, and you're reflecting them now.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely had some aha moments lately, and just kind of, perpetuating this fear of abandonment, or just this, you know what I mean? Like, we all have like these fears based on some childhood experience, right? And so then we can kind of perpetuate those because we think that's, what's happening. But no, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Well, and with emotionally focused therapy, one aspect is to draw on what's going on in the body. Right. So that's where what you were saying comes in.
Yeah.
Right. If I take a moment to see what is happening, then I can quiet that narrative that's in my brain, and maybe even let in some new information.
Yeah.
That could be more healing or cause a different result.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's hard to talk about that narrative when you're in an anxious state.
Yeah.
Because like your brain just goes haywire when you're anxious. And it goes a million miles a minute. And so how do you, from that perspective, I think a lot of people don't even realize they're in that state, and this stuff leads to not even just the effects of purity culture, but also these perpetuating things that we say in our brain. Like, if we're constantly saying negative things to ourselves, our body's going to tense up everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you don't realize that you're tensing, and you don't realize that you're perpetuating these narratives, how are you supposed to change anything?
Yeah, exactly. Here's a fun twist for you.
Oh.
In the body,
anxiety,
nervousness, that sort of like all of that tightness or wherever it is, mirrors excitement.
Yeah.
So the body actually doesn't know the difference between excitement, anticipation, and nervousness, anxiety.
It was funny. My therapist told me that the other few weeks ago. He showed me, like, was it the MRI or what was it that they figured that out? There was a study, and they like showed like the different areas that light up based on what you're experiencing. And so that's interesting.
Yeah. So if you tell somebody, like they're getting ready to go like on a roller coaster or something, right? You're like, what's going on in your body? I have butterflies and my chest is tight and I don't know. And I can't really focus, but they're like excited. You're like, oh, you're excited. Right. And we like it. That's a good experience. That's a good manifestation of it. Right.
Yeah.
But when it's the bad sort of right feeling in there, oh, my partner and the dilators and all of this stuff, like now it's the same feeling in my body, but the thoughts are different. The experience is different.
Yeah.
So I just think that's important, because maybe if you have that secure relationship, right? If you have that invitation to consent, you have that safety and you have that communication, maybe there's just a little dose of excitement that might have already been pre-programmed as anxiety bad, but could actually be good.
Yeah.
So that, I know that's a dirt path away from what you were saying.
I love it. I think that it's just another way to understand our bodies.
Yeah.
And essentially what you're learning to do is articulate the feelings that you're having.
Yes.
And just kind of understanding, like, oh, okay, there's Brene Brown did a special, I think it was on Apple TV or something, I don't know which one it was, recently, about identifying your emotions. And each emotion, that when you can identify it, then you can communicate your partner differently. Like, I am overwhelmed versus like, I am, just flustered, or I don't know the exact words that she uses, but overwhelmed. Then you can articulate, I'm overwhelmed right now, or I am anxious right now, or I feel sad that I can't, XYZ or whatever. And so articulating those emotions can really make a difference too on like how you communicate in general in life, but definitely to your partner. Because if you don't know what you're feeling in your body and you don't know what emotions you're feeling, how can you articulate that to anybody if you don't know?
Right.
And so a lot of this, going back to yourself, what are these beliefs that you've held for years? Like, what is this ongoing perpetual theme?
A really great exercise to do along those lines is to get a journal or your phone or whatever you feel safe writing in and set a alarm, like maybe randomly 1 to 2 times throughout the day.
Yeah.
And in that moment, just stop and write down what is going on inside your body.
Yeah.
Just like a mindfulness check. So I know like Apple Watches have like, take a minute to be mindful. This is kind of the same, but different. This is actually like, wait, I'm going to write down like, what is happening inside my body right now?
Yeah.
Right. I am sitting here doing a podcast with my friend Mary that I'd love to spend more time with, but we don't see each other because we're both so busy. I'm calm.
Yeah.
I thought I would be nervous.
Yeah.
But I'm calm and I'm feeling content and I'm noticing I'm talking quite fluidly, right? And just mark that.
Yeah.
And see what's going on throughout the day for you.
Yeah.
That's just like a mindfulness exercise to begin that process for yourself.
I think that's great. I love that. Is there any advice that you have for anybody that is actively kind of working, like maybe this is the first time they're actually realizing that was their narrative that they had, or they have been wanting to address it and they don't know how to address it? What's like the first thing that they can change? Would you say that? Like obviously see a therapist and stuff, but like what is like something they can start right now?
Yeah, I would say that. Just
checking in with your body, what you're feeling. And I find that I tell people that too. Like every time so many people have Apple Watches and the breathe thing that pops up. I tell people when you see that, check in with your body.
Yeah,
just because it's already doing it, and they're like, "Oh, I just hit ignore." I'm like, "Does anybody actually breathe when they do that?"
You know why? Because it happens so often.
Yeah.
Right, and it becomes that obligation. How subtle we are in response to things.
I know we're so predictable though. Anything that's obligated or you have to do or you can't do, these like just visceral like yes or no kind of things like that. We're never going to respond to it. We see this in every aspect of, our world. Yeah. If you force somebody to do something, they resent it and they don't want to do it.
Yeah. So even if it's like a really good thing, like breathe.
They always get pissed off. It's really funny.
I'm not going to breathe right now.
I'm going to hold my breath, actually, Apple Watch.
Yeah. Oh, I've gotten in fights with MapQuest. You're like, no, I'm not going to turn here. No, don't tell me what to do. No, I'm just kidding.
You need to change the voice. So it's like, hello.
Yes, the do voice.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said, yes. And I would invite, again, a reframe of how they view it, right? So that we're moving away from obligation. So let's say the mindfulness moment taking, right? You do it 2 to 3 times a day, and you're doing it for a minute each. Okay. And that the reframe would be a commitment to learning what you're actually telling yourself. Right. So it's a commitment to my body is speaking to me. I'm not listening. So for these 3 minutes a day, spread out throughout the day, I'm actually going to listen to my body because it has some really wise things to tell me. And I'm curious about it.
Biggest thing that I find that that's the biggest disconnect between Western medicine and Eastern medicine is like, or Western medicine only looks at the problems. We're not looking at why did these things happen in the first place.
Yeah, your body is talking to you all the time.
It's crazy. It is, but we ignore it and we haven't been told to listen to it. And so it's really important to educate people in their bodies because it changes every other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Work, kids, life, friends, family, partnerships.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. And what we'll do is we'll tag your website on the show notes. And then Yeah, so they can reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great.
That'd be great. Yes, please reach out.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.